Ticks. They're annoying, and they can make you sick. What more is there to say? Well, there's a lot more. For example, how climate change is pushing ticks and their diseases north. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Pearsall Wealth Management at UBS Wealth Management USA, subsidiary UBS AG, member FINRA SIPC, 1 Broad Street, Glens Falls.
Hey, I'm David Summerstein. It's Monday, July 8th. First up, a statue of Harriet Tubman was installed in Lake Placid last week. Tubman helped dozens of black people escape slavery. During her decades of work along the Underground Railroad, she met fellow abolitionist and former Adirondacker John Brown, and the two became friends. Tubman's statue, called the Beacon of Hope, was designed by Wesley Wofford and is on display from now until the end of September at John Brown Farm in Lake Placid. Emily Russell was there as the statue was unloaded and spoke with Shondell Frazier about Tubman's legacy and what programs she's helping organize at the farm this summer to honor Tubman.
The programs are designed to illuminate some of the skills that Harriet Tubman would have used throughout her long career as a freedom seeker, freedom fighter, and a seeker of justice. So we have some themes such as her wayfinding skills, utilizing waterways, the stars, naturalism skills, knowing herbalism, so that on the run, in case anything needed to come up or if you needed to forage, she would have had those skills. Then we had her spirituality, her deep faith, which also gave her the courage to launch out on her own. Ultimately, having the statue here is really important because she and John Brown had great respect for each other. And so he considered her a general. And of course, he was Captain John Brown, so of equal rank, which is also very symbolic. And so I love the idea of them being in conversation on his property. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what is it like? I mean, we're watching right now as the statue is going in on this farm in this beautiful setting. What is it like just to kind of see this all take place?
It's really moving. My journey as a person of culture coming up here has been led by John's spirit as well as Harriet and those of the people of Timbuktu and the Raiders. So it just feels like those who called me here have finally all arrived for the reunion. Yeah. It's really moving to me to just see her here, and then she's facing his statue as well. She was actually supposed to be on the raid with John Brown. And it's not clear. We don't have any documentation or sources to say why she didn't go. I think I've seen somewhere that maybe she was sick.
I was just reading that, actually, that she was sick during his hanging.
That's the other theme. So she was a person who lived with disability.
Right.
Yeah. So we don't know if there was the sickness that we also saw was tied to her visions that helped her know when to go and when not to go.
Right. And that was all connected to an injury she got when she was just a teenager, right? I mean, and I was just reading about this. I didn't know this backstory of hers. Could you just say more about that and kind of how it factored into her activism throughout her life?
You know, I wish I had more information about that. I'm actually a person who lives with disability, and I always forget that she would have been going through the woods at night, being chased with people dependent on her and afraid with not enough supplies and at risk of having a seizure at any given moment, you know. She was a tremendous person. So for her, I know she had the home for the aged and the disabled. So I know that was a goal that, I don't know if it was fully realized as she was waiting for her pension for most of her later life.
Yeah, it was. I mean, she did create that home, and that's where she ultimately died at 91 years old, which is just incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Talk about defying the odds of the time, right? On the way over, I was just thinking, like, if John hadn't been, involved in his, just deep fight for us, he probably would have lived to be the same age, given how strong and healthy he was in the 1800s, right? Yeah.
That was Shondell Frazier speaking with Emily Russell at John Brown Farm. Frazier and others unveiled the statue of Harriet Tubman at the farm on Friday. It's on display there until the end of September. Over the last 20 years, ticks and the diseases they carry, like Lyme disease, have spread rapidly in northeastern states, including New York and next door in Vermont. Scientists say human-caused climate change is one reason why, but it's not the only thing driving their growth. Vermont Public's Abigail Giles has this story.
It's a warm, sunny day in April, and Patty Casey and her colleague, Eliza Doncaster, are suited up like they're ready to handle something toxic in a laboratory. But we're not in a lab. We're in a beautiful field in Brownsville, Vermont.
So we have this cool 1 meter square white flag, and we're either dragging it or flagging it through vegetation looking for ticks.
Patty and Eliza are with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture's tick surveillance team. While most people avoid ticks, they visit every town in Vermont in the spring and fall every 5 years to find them. Lots of them. Hence the hazmat-esque suits.
We're starting to accumulate data over time so that we can see places where ticks are moving into or perhaps declining. Are they moving into higher elevations? Areas where there's more like suburban, development.
When they find one, they pick it up with tweezers and drop it into a little vial of alcohol. This vial of ticks will go back to the state laboratory to get tested for diseases. Black-legged ticks, also called deer ticks, carry the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. But they also carry a bunch of other bacteria, viruses, and parasites that cause other illnesses. Natalie Quitt is with the Vermont Department of Health.
And those diseases are, in order of most common to least common, are Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, babesiosis, Borrelia miyamotoi disease, and lastly, Powassan virus.
When Lyme was first reported in Vermont a little more than 20 years ago, it was pretty rare. But now the state sees more than 1,000 new cases every year. The Centers for Disease Control considers Vermont a high-incidence state for Lyme, anaplasmosis, and babesiosis. And now people are catching Lyme year-round.
So what we are seeing, like other states with these tick-borne illnesses nationally, is an upward trend.
It's a problem Quitt and the health department are very worried about. And they're not alone.
There is evidence for the northward expansion of these tick-borne illnesses and the ticks themselves being contributed to by climate change. I would say that's fairly strong evidence.
That's Rick Ostfeld with the nonprofit Carey Institute of Ecosystem Studies in Millbrook, New York. He's been doing some of the longest-running surveillance of tick populations in the Northeast. Because of human-caused climate change, Vermont now sees about a week more freeze-free days than it did in the 1970s. And the growing season is getting longer every decade. Ostfeld says that makes it easier for black-legged ticks to find hosts to feed on at critical stages of their life cycle. But humans are also driving the spread of ticks in other ways.
One main factor that is contributing to the expansion of the ticks is this habitat fragmentation, destruction, suburbanization, which removes some of the natural biodiversity that we have in the animal communities. So some of the predators disappear.
Black-legged ticks aren't choosy and will happily feed on most mammals. But small rodents like chipmunks or white-footed mice or shrews are particularly good hosts for them. And they're also the animals that infect the ticks with pathogens, like the one that causes Lyme. When we allow suburban sprawl to break up big chunks of forests, predators like bobcats, foxes, weasels, and raptors leave, and other animals too. And that creates room for rodents to thrive.
We are inadvertently filtering out the protective species and allowing in the dangerous species when we fragment the landscape and erode habitat quality.
Ostfeld says scientists think this is part of why we're seeing tick-borne illnesses spread radially, not just northwards. And while forest fragmentation and climate change are two big factors, he says researchers know there are still drivers they don't understand. But he says there's good news. Climate change and sprawl are things that humans can address through public policy. Natalie Quitt with the Vermont Department of Health says it's critical that Vermonters, especially those who work outside, take steps to protect themselves and find ticks early. She says it's the best tool we have.
I think a simple way to remember it is protect, check, remove, watch.
That's protect yourself by avoiding areas where ticks live and wearing protective clothing and EPA-approved insect repellents. Treat your pets for ticks seasonally. Check yourself and your clothes every time you spend time outdoors. And consider putting your clothing in the dryer on high for 10 minutes when you come in from the woods. Taking a shower soon after being outdoors is another proven way to reduce your risk of getting sick. Lastly, Quitt says,
and then if you do have an attached tick, remove promptly.
She recommends using fine-tipped tweezers. Then monitor yourself for signs and symptoms of illness or rash for 30 days.
That was Abigail Giles from Vermont Public reporting. We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Tim Elifritz of Johnsburg and Martha Gallagher of Keene. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.